Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the March 13th workshop of the Board of County Commissioners. Will all please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first thing on our agenda, today we have Miss Thurman, Miss Jessica Thurman, and we're going to talk about the SWORD, the Southwest Opioid Response District. See? I do my homework.
I know you do. I'm impressed. You do your homework. Right. So, pretty straightforward. These are the MOUs that we're needing to have signed. We reached some, or nationally, they reached some more settlements with more distributors. And so we are just going to need these 5 forms signed. And so we can send them back out, demonstrating that we would like to pool our settlement dollars within the region. So then we receive more funds that way.
So these are in addition to what was originally stated in the original settlement.
Exactly. These are new defendants that have now settled, and so it's just additional money that's coming in. In essence, when we originally got the first amount of settlement dollars, the idea was that we would pool that money together in the region, and that region's comprised of the different local governments and different stakeholders. The idea was that the money was an amount that individually it really wouldn't be enough to make a huge impact, but if we pooled it together, we were hopeful that we could really get something substantial done. I mean, maybe even some kind of an inpatient facility, I think, would be the ultimate dream. I don't think that the money's there, but
yeah, exactly. So we're working with an agency right now, our consultants, to look at the feasibility of doing something of that sort. And there's been several concerns and thoughts brought to our attention, whether or not that would even be something that would be productive for the region or not. So we're looking at all possibilities with these consultants to see how we can make the best use of these funds and hopefully address the opiate issue here in the community and the region.
So obviously you've looked these over, Ian, and there's nothing.
No, there's nothing concerning. This
Okay.
is just basically signing that money over into the pool for the SWORD region. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good idea. I mean,
And then you'll have the documents for tomorrow?
I do. Do you want me to come back and present? Do you want me to leave these with you? How do we want to do that?
I think you can just leave them with us.
Okay.
We'll sign them tomorrow, obviously, because we do all of that in an actual business meeting. This is just our question and answer period for anything that we're conversating about, and it's pretty much just an addition to what we've already done in the past couple of years.
and Kim should have those documents tomorrow with signature lines. So Jessica, I don't even know. Kim usually has the packets, and she just
Okay.
will bring that in. So I think we should be good to sign those
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't have to present anything, just either
Perfect.
leave them here or give them to Kim, and
I'll leave them here just in case. I did fill out the headers on these. I don't know.
just
the ones
make
that
sure
I've
we have the
included.
places marked where you need signed, and we'll go from there.
Will do.
I would just come down and sign them today, but my attorney might probably get mad at me.
We'll do it the right way. We'll
Mike-
make sure we
Mike
don't want to
would
mess
get mad
this
at
up.
No, probably there.
Mike would get mad at me.
You don't want them mad at you. All right. Is there any questions on SWORD or any of the other?
I think I asked this last time, but that's part of La Plata County's, basically survey study for the feasibility study. And that's supposed to be done in June, right?
I believe June is when we should have the final product. We just met with the consultants at our last meeting last week. They came down and said that they were conducting just some needs assessment, collecting data, talking with people to really get a good picture. Within the region, though, it's not just La Plata County, it's La Plata, Archuleta, and Dolores.
Right, but we were looking at the
The
facility, the old Demir place
in La Plata.
in La Plata County, okay, all right. Okay, that's all
Yeah.
that's all I have.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of the week.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jessica. All right, Mel Jarmon, I don't see Mel here.
I just talked to him, he's not gonna make it. My understanding though is we put out a request for some additional information on the pad. And it sounds like the company that was recommended may or may not be able to accommodate
For the
for the
liner,
liner. But he's not gonna be able to make it at this point. in
right,
time.
because we had postponed making that decision from what, last week?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago?
So we could probably put that off till next week.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, good enough. All right, and then we have a discussion related to CSU and employees. Looks like we have the whole kit and caboodle here.
Yeah, not quite all of them.
We have Emily, Lynn, and I know your name, hold on. Tyranny?
Tiffany.
Tyranny?
Tyranny.
Tyranny. All right, I
Tyranny.
see.
Yeah, well, and Lynn is here because I guess we've opened up a slight can of worms, but hopefully this is a positive conversation to have now instead of when we have any issues. So Tierney and I were discussing, she has some events coming up, and so we're CSU employees, and then we were asking Lynn about some logistics with like 4-H volunteers driving county vehicles, and then Lynn realized that us as CSU Extension employees were not on our insurance policy. Is that correct?
Yeah, according to our employee handbook, and after speaking with our insurance carrier, that only potential employees, Montezuma County employees and/or Montezuma County employees are allowed to drive vehicles. And as also stated in our handbook, along the same lines. So, and I know previously the 4-H agent used to actually be, and I think that therein lies also with the rub of the issue is previously the 4-H agent was a county employee, and since the restructuring is
Well,
no longer,
But previously, extension agents have been driving that vehicle, so, yeah.
and prior to, I don't know whether the previous administration was aware of that or previous HR was aware of that. Obviously, insurance was not.
Lynn, is there a way to get non-county employees added under that policy?
I would have to, well, he said there is, but once we open that, that opens it to everybody asking to use county vehicles.
And so, I mean, I don't know what that means, opens it to everybody. I mean, ultimately, you guys make the decisions as to who you want to put on the policy. And, you know, and that's going to be based on what sort of costs there's going to be involved in that. So, you know, I think it's important to dispel any notion right now, just because you put one non-county employee on the policy, assuming the insurance company will allow it. I mean, this is
Right.
all contingent on what they're going to do. It doesn't mean that you have to put all non-employees on. I mean, that's really a decision that this board and this administration has to make. You know, I mean, there's no legal precedent here.
Right.
I mean, this is just how you guys want to run your shop.
And he had just suggested if we were going to go down that avenue, just to get their motor vehicle record and a copy of their ID, which I've already done, you know, ahead of time if this goes down that course of action or that avenue, so.
So then we also have an MOU with the county, you know, and it says for travel that, so, you know, we have the county responsibilities and then the CSU responsibilities. And so that's kind of outlined in generally what happens just for like county covering of different expenses is like where extension is located, support staff. I think that specific language in there says like reasonable support staff, you know, so our office supplies and then travel. So like for me to do my job and visit people and do site visits, you know, that's a part of my job, as well as, you know, traveling to like professional development events. And so usually then counties, you know, across the state then are providing that ability, you know, to travel in a vehicle with a county vehicle. So it's not a CSU vehicle that extension agents have throughout the state. It's really then that county agreement for providing that resource. And then for Tierney, within her 4-H position, so that has changed, but like Jan, was a CSU employee back in the day, and she was transporting 4-H, youth. And so that's another part of this is, and why I invited Tierney here, because I was talking to Tierney about this because she has an event coming up of a 4-H camp in Hesperus. And so she was planning on transporting 4-H youth to that event, and that's what Andrea would do in the past, the program coordinator. So then it's also a discussion of, can 4-H youth ride in a car? And if the county doesn't allow that, then that's like going to be a really big problem for the 4-H program. And we don't know how we'll get those kids there. So.
Uber. Smarty.
And so at least in terms of this MOU, I think that there's a strong argument to be made that this MOU does not bind the county to provide a vehicle to the extension. That doesn't mean that that's not something that you guys want to consider doing, or you don't want to make a vehicle accessible through some means. But, I'm just looking strictly at the language of this MOU. It talks about covering essential costs of travel. Car's a pretty big thing, and is it essential, is it not? I think that, I think my reading of this is if they wanted to grant a car, if the county wanted to grant a car to the extension office, and then that's what they would have done. They would have laid that out. County will provide a vehicle to the CSU extension.
Well, we have that in our budget. So, and I know maybe, I guess we're interpreting travel in different ways. So like how, if I travel to a site visit, I know it doesn't explicitly say a vehicle, but that's what's been done in the past. And I know the county apparently hasn't had that insurance done properly.
So legally, the past doesn't matter.
Right.
Legally, it doesn't matter. It has absolutely no bearing on this situation. But, what you guys decide to do, I'm not saying don't give a car. I'm just saying, by the documentation, by the history, you're not obligated to do that. Now, that doesn't mean it's not a good idea to do. That's just the legality of it.
I think maybe we ought to get Bentley in here and have a visit and
I
see
don't-
what our limits are, so we know and staff knows, and, there may be a simple solution that he can come up with.
Well, it sounds like
I
he,
would think-
When I called Bentley and inquired about it, my interpretation of what the handbook said in our policy said that was clear and cut, and that's the easy way to keep it clean and simple.
Right.
But we could make accommodations, hence get their driving record,
Because
the
of
driving
the
records for
MOU.
7 years. If it's clean and we're comfortable with it, which their driving records are fine, then we would add their names to the driver's license list. Now, what it entails carrying youth along, God forbid something happens, CSU won't get sued, the county will. It's a county
That's why I want
vehicle.
to talk to Bentley.
ultimately, it's really an
So,
insurance
yeah,
question
it's
and
an
what the policy's
insurance.
gonna cover. And if you're gonna do this, you just have to be sure that the insurance is gonna cover us if something
Right.
happens.
And these are separate questions of like, can CSU employees, so Tierney and I, can we drive these vehicles? And then can 4-Hers ride in those vehicles? And like, I was just talking to Gus Westerman in Dolores County. I was like, can 4-H volunteers drive a vehicle in your county? He said, yes. But so when I talked to my supervisor, Eric McPhail, he said it varies by county, what counties are comfortable with. So, in terms of 4-H volunteers driving their vehicles. But I would say every other county provides a vehicle for extension agents to drive.
I'm sure it's something that can be arranged through insurance. And given the services that the Ag Extension Office provides, that's probably,
Right.
it's probably very worthwhile to figure out a way to make it work.
I'm not sure we need to get Bentley in here. I would say Lynn just work with Bentley and figure out what we have to do with Bentley, because obviously it's been happening, and I know that the past doesn't mean anything, but without a vehicle, you can't really do your
You
job.
can't function.
Unless CSU is gonna provide you one.
CSU is not gonna, like, we have to have funds somehow. So like, say the research center, they have CSU vehicles, but it's that agreement with counties that is cooperative, extension. It's an understanding that this is something that then the local counties provide for their local extension folks.
I mean, under the MOU, it says equipment, then it says travel, but it doesn't say travel equipment, and
Yeah, and so
it's kind
The
of.
MOU is ambiguous,
Yeah.
but ultimately the point is extension program serves a really important purpose in the community. These guys need a car for their job. There's got to be a way to make this work.
So it is two different questions, though. I think to cover you two specifically, I think that's gonna be pretty easy. To cover you transporting kids, that might be a little bit, that might be a little bit tougher, and what we've done in the past may not be what we do in the future. But I would just say, get with Bentley and really, I mean, what kind of an additional cost is it gonna be to add them as an addition? Because through this MOU, they are working for the county.
Right, and
So I know that they're not a county employee, but
It's really a question they're absolutely not a county employee,
no.
but it's just a matter of insurance
and
and
I don't
straightening
know
it
if
out
the
on
insurance
that end.
fluxes per number of drivers on the list or not. Obviously, our employee numbers are always flexing back and forth and everything. So
Well, if you-
having non-employee, 2 people, as long as we're happy with their driving record, we send that and everything to them. I don't know whether it would increase our cost or not for the agents themselves or director them. But flip side of the coin is, what all does that entail? Does that cover passengers?
Right.
It doesn't matter
Yeah,
what kind of passenger,
And-
whether it's youth or an adult, just passengers, period.
Yeah.
and that would be,
We can't get away. We need to get Bentley in here and have him
Yeah,
figure out what we can do, because we can't.
They gotta have a vehicle.
They gotta have somebody to help them drive and
Right.
stuff. They can't just, you can't make them drive all the way places. Sometimes it's a lot of hours, and that's putting their passengers in jeopardy. I think we need to get Bentley in here, and we need to figure out how we can resolve this thing where we can have
Well,
some other people
so it's
drive
just a-
too, because that's
I think-
silly.
I think to cover them too is gonna be easy.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
just my
I agree.
opinion.
I don't think that'll be
And I
an
don't
issue,
know,
but we
it's
need to
more
figure
the
out what else we can do,
transportation
because
of
there's
youth.
situations where that's not gonna be a good situation for them to have to drive all the way either. Yeah,
So-
I think we need to talk to Bentley and
Well, you're not
get
letting the
this
youth
straightened
drive
out.
anyway.
No.
No, that's just, so that's,
So
They're just
there's
passengers.
multiple times that we have to go clear across this state, and taking like 8 to 10 kids is pretty average. Which right now we don't have a vehicle for 10 kids.
well, and so this is came out of maybe a good problem. So Tierney has, 8 kids who want to go to a camp in Hesperus. So pretty close by, but still a burden to ask parents to drive their kids over there. So, reached out to Shane Motor Vehicle. So we, booked the Suburban, and then we have another 4-H volunteer who then we're like, well, can they drive another county vehicle to get those kids over there? And then this kind of opened up this whole can of worms. But then we still have a question of so then do we have to limit the number of kids that can go to any activity based on the size of that Suburban, of what Tierney could drive those number of kids? So how do we get another volunteer to be able to drive kids someplace? So our temporary solution, if 4-H kids can drive in a county vehicle, is to have our new program assistant, Todd, a county employee, then he can drive kids. So then we're essentially paying him to be a chauffeur, which doesn't always make sense. But it's we told those kids they could go to this event, and we need to get those kids there somehow, is, what we're trying to do.
and the Suburban's not the assigned vehicle to CSU, correct?
No.
It's the Ford Explorer.
it's a
Yeah.
Right.
checkout vehicle.
It's the
It's a
Suburban-
pull
The
vehicle.
Suburban's, okay,
It's a checkout vehicle, so it's the largest vehicle that the county has that we could check out.
right, on top of the Explorer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were just looking for a vehicle that had larger
Yeah, I
capacity.
think so.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we just give Lynn the opportunity and flexibility to get with Bentley and figure it out, because Obviously, like I said, I think you two are gonna be easy, because you're doing your functions, day-to-day operations. I think the passenger issue is where it becomes more of a
Have you, I mean,
more of a
we can go
situation.
fishing. Have you talked to MoCo?
No. Like asking them to bus kids over
Yeah.
there? No. I mean, we could reach out. I mean, there's also things like in Denver. So do they transport all over the state or?
And then costs, I want to think about costs for these 4-H members too.
Right.
Like, it could be more expensive to get a bus. I don't,
And I guess
Well,
really
they-
the questions we
I
need to
mean,
ask at this
yeah.
point are, number one,
Just
what does
the
it take to get
insurance.
you guys to be able to drive?
Yes,
Number
please.
two, what does it take to be able to get kids on to be driven? And then number three, what would it take to get 4-H volunteers licensed to drive the county vehicles? I mean, those are really the three questions.
That's it. That's the way I see it.
And then insurance just
So
has
if
to
we
let
can
us
get
know.
with Bentley Lynn and just get those
I'll shoot 'em an
identified, then
email
we
when we're
can.
done here and see what I can find out.
But the most urgent would be these two.
Yeah, like I have
Which we've already kind of,
Yeah.
I've already got that prep ready to go. As long
We-
as you guys give the green light, but I can clarify on the other two concerns.
we got that information to her very quickly.
Yes, last Friday.
We already know that this is pretty necessary to what we're gonna do, to get these kids around and get these people to and from the places they
So-
need to get.
So do all the kids rely on us for transportation to where they're going? Do their parents not take them or
parents
what?
can take them, but it's the longer trips. Like, a lot of our trips are going to be in Denver or CSU, Fort Collins. So that's where a lot of our trips are going to be. Which parents, then they take in their own liability of taking other 4-H members in their car with them. Not just their own children, but other 4-H members as well.
And we do have supplemental insurance through, it's like I don't know if it's through
It
CSU.
is, American.
Oh,
something.
America. So there's like CSU insurance for those volunteers, and then we have supplemental on top of that. We pay $1 per volunteer and per kid that there's additional insurance on those kids. I don't fully, Ian, I might have to bring you in to fully understand, like, what does that cover? Yeah.
So, like, the 4-H members are supposed to have coverage up to a certain point, and then that supplemental then kicks in to help cover the rest of it.
So let me ask you this question. Because if this gets too convoluted, what would prohibit us from just renting a Suburban as a volunteer and they can put whoever they want to in there?
And that's something that then we are asking CSU.
That doesn't, we don't have to ask Bentley, we don't have to have, there's no liability with that at all. We rent a vehicle, we rent another Suburban, and you let Gerald drive it. And he's a volunteer and he takes you to Fort Collins.
And
I
that,
mean, anybody can rent a car as long as they're over 21,
21, I think.
25 or whatever.
but then I think then the liability then is on him, as so it's like as a volunteer taking on that liability. And we've reached out to CSU to figure out, so if we did that, if we were like renting a vehicle for a volunteer, is it the volunteer renting it and taking on that liability, or is it somehow like, are they renting it through the county or through CSU that's covering that?
We could still rent it through the county in my simple mind. It's just like renting a car when we go,
Well, we're getting
when
down
we
around.
go
The
to our
better
conference.
way to do it is to just get our insurance to
Yeah.
get this done. That's the safe, easy way. Insurance covers it, and then
But
we're
we
just,
still may be stuck in the same situation. We have 12 kids going to Fort Collins. We can't do it in the Suburban. We're gonna have to rent an outside vehicle.
But
My-
then it
But
would
it
still
then just
fall
falls
under,
under our
it'd fall
insurance.
under our insurance
Okay.
at that point, is how I would understand it.
yeah. I mean, I haven't reviewed the fine print of the policy, but that would be the way I would anticipate that policy's written.
And not to get even more convoluted, like other counties have vans, like what is La Plata has like a 12-passenger van that is really for transporting 4-H kids. So I'm not asking for you to fund that, but like that's just what other counties have. So if we could find creative funding to fund something like that, if that's a need, like, because I can see this is a good problem that we have a lot of 4-Hers who are interested in going to these things, and we just got to work through how to get them there.
I think that's what Commissioner Lindsay was saying, that MoCo does have a
Yeah.
small, I don't
Yeah.
know what the capacity is, but it's probably not over a dozen.
Yeah, maybe 15.
Guessing.
Yeah.
So is that
But
a
it would-
county vehicle? Like county owned? Okay.
It's
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 an enterprise.
complicated.
It's an enterprise.
It's complicated.
Well, I'll reach out to them.
It's kind of like insurance.
Yeah, like this whole discussion.
Because then you could take all of you with an actual certified driver for that vehicle. But
And I think that's the other thing, I think you have to be certified or a type of driver to have more than so many passengers in a vehicle also.
yeah, and I don't know what that number is.
Federal Motor Carrier Act.
I used to
Well,
haul
that's
a
the insurance.
swim team all over the state on a minibus, and I didn't have
Yeah.
anything special. The school just let me drive it around the block, and they said, "You're good to go."
So you're the short bus driver.
Probably an insurance violation.
I don't know. I wasn't wearing my attorney hat, so they gave me the keys and said,
Let's
I'm
just
sure
get with
there's
Bentley
probably
and
something
we'll
in
ask
their
those few
insurance
questions.
policy
I
that said
think
they
we
could do
can,
that.
So ask about
That's-
non-employees,
Yeah.
passengers, and then
volunteers.
Volunteers.
So like if we had 2 county vehicles and we needed a volunteer,
And I would
Anybody-
assume that would fall under non-county
Yeah.
employee.
Yeah.
So basically, yeah, the 2 questions.
so those are the 3 questions and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
But these are the 2 urgent ones, which I think that'll be pretty quick and easy.
And one more urgent by the 31st, right?
Well,
We can have Todd chauffeur.
Yeah.
I have a
It's
site
just
visit
Vespers.
on Thursday that's like 45 minutes away, so I've informed Todd if we can't get this solved by Thursday that he gets to go on the site visit with me and drive me there.
Oh, well, that sounds like a pretty good deal. You probably ought
yeah.
to just go down that path.
I'll just be chauffeured everywhere.
Let me call my driver.
Yeah, Todd. So with Vicky, I didn't know if you needed to make a decision about this, like at your formal meeting on a Tuesday.
It will be on a Tuesday.
Okay.
But really, this is going to be a decision that's going to be based on the insurance. So once we've had the conversation now, Lynn can bring forth the information to us, so you don't necessarily have to be here on a Tuesday when we make it.
Okay. Well, I'm scheduled for tomorrow because I didn't know if I would need to do that. So.
Okay.
Do you think we could have an answer today or by tomorrow?
Bentley's usually pretty quick. Like I said, I'll email him right when I'm done, and then usually he's fairly quick. And like I said, I've already spoken with him regarding this, and he'd already given an option, which we've already fulfilled. So, and like I said, their driving records are clean, so I'm sure he's gonna be fine. It's just going to be up to you whether
we
you're
want to
willing
allow
to do
it.
that. That's not up to me, it's up to you. And then number 2, and then asking the new question or clarifying with passengers and volunteer.
Volunteer.
I'm assuming the volunteer is gonna kind of fall under non-employee, but I'll clarify
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, really, there wouldn't be any distinction for
No.
insurance purposes between a volunteer and
Non-employee,
you
yeah.
guys.
There wouldn't,
Because, I mean, it's,
And
they're not a county employee either
And-
way.
to be a volunteer, they've had a background check done. I know this is through CSU, so, you know, it's external to the county, but there has been some level of vetting them. And things like DUIs do pop up and, you know, so through that CSU, you know, background check, that would flag a volunteer that they would be inappropriate to, you know, drive youth in some circumstances.
So we'd probably just have to get their DMV record and their
Mhm.
driver's license too.
But if we had a policy in place, then that would be super helpful, that we would know exactly what we have. So if we have 20 kids who want to go someplace, then Tierney can just rock and roll and figure out how to get them there.
Well, I would definitely just check with MoCo too, because they actually do have it's not really, I guess it is a little bus, but
Yeah, it's a little bus.
kind of a
Okay.
short.
Well,
Do they
van.
go to
that's what I
Denver?
used to.
Yeah.
Or can we get Tierney the training to drive a small bus to Denver?
Or to driven ones. So I think we're good.
Okay.
I mean, because that really
Yeah,
is
I
the
don't-
most
Yeah.
effective way to take them all
Yeah.
together.
MoCo's requirements are a little stiffer, I think. They
Okay.
But
Well,
that's,
might be a CDL involved there.
transporting the public,
Yeah.
which is different.
And how far can it go?
Well,
They're
Well,
talking,
if you
That's
go
whole
by
other
the-
worm.
well, that's a standard that's set by the, FM, what is that acronym?
The FM,
Federal
Federal Motor
Highway
Carriers
Motor
Act.
Carriers, is
Yeah.
FMCSA. So, like for us, we can only have a 14-hour shift, but you can't drive over 11 hours in those 14 hours. So you have time for a pre-check, you have time for a post-check, you have time for your break, and that consumes your 14 hours. But if it takes you longer than 14 hours to get to Fort Collins, you're in trouble anyway.
There's a bigger problem.
There's a bigger problem.
Weather.
Plus, that's,
So-
he's talking commercial, and this isn't commercial. We're not charging for this, we're just,
No, but it would still have to fall under something
Yeah.
like that.
But would you allow the MoCo van, or could we afford it to be gone for that long, or during
That's a-
that time
That's,
period?
that
and
would be a
not
question for her.
serving the community?
Yeah,
Sorry, ladies, I'm not trying to be.
because, because
we
I
got
think
those.
she
But
has
these are
a,
just-
she has an extra one, her backup.
Oh, does she?
I
Okay.
think so, but that's a question for Jennifer, because that's way more effective to take them all at one time than,
Didn't have an extra
Splitting them
drivers
up.
and all that.
Yeah, totally agree. I'll reach out to them, see what they say, and can start
I'll
that
get with them
conversation.
on-
and she might say, no, can't do it, no way, I mean, but
Yeah.
it's a conversation you have to have with her first.
Mhm. Okay.
Is it ever, are you ever going out of state?
Yeah, I mean, I go to New Mexico,
Oh.
Utah, so I guess that is a question of what out-of-state requirements would be,
It might be something you want to ask also. Because
should have brought,
Yeah, I
making your
mean,
list longer, huh?
do you need a piece of paper?
No. Non-employees, passengers, volunteers, and out-of-state
I
travel.
think it's just an age requirement. If they're over 21, they can go
Right, and
anywhere.
have a
They can
clean
go
record.
interstate, and if they're under 21, it's got to be intrastate. So that's pretty common
Oh, okay.
language.
Do you allow your county employees, like, is that a policy that they can go out of state?
Yeah, our county employees go out of state.
I
Yeah.
took
For
my own
trainings.
vehicle for training.
Well, like the sheriff's office, they have to
Yeah,
go
Yeah.
out of
they
state
go
all
out
the
of
time.
state.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're so close to
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
other states, we're out of state in 45 minutes.
Well, yeah, and that would be my point, sometimes we collaborate with farmers, in Utah, or I collaborate with the research center in Farmington, so,
Yeah, that's,
yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that.
Yeah, or collaborating with Mount Ute, all of a sudden you're in New Mexico or Utah or something, so.
right. And I think that would, Bentley would tell you the same thing, but it's going to follow those same laws of an age requirement. And obviously, you're over 21, 22 maybe. but
Just barely, yes.
Just barely. So you're good to go. However, I'm not quite sure about you, Tierney.
I'm 26, so
Okay.
yes.
Good to go.
Okay. All right, I'll get
All
with
right.
Bentley and
If,
let you guys.
if
Okay.
we don't have time to get the answer, we won't make a decision on it tomorrow.
Okay.
It'll be the next week.
Okay, well, I think we'll say hello to you tomorrow. We'll just plan on
Okay.
that and see where we're at.
Okay,
Okay.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So then, Ian, one last question. Do we add that into that MOU somehow, or do we just leave it ambiguous like it is now? Because it's
We
gonna come
can, we
up
can
again.
redo the MOU, but I mean, ultimately, like, as long as we've got them covered
Just-
by insurance, I think it's
We're
fine.
good to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I guess on the MOU, so I've talked to my supervisor, Eric, who was recommending to update MOUs a little bit more frequently, because that was done in like 2018. And I don't know if Travis, like, would we sit down and look at it, or, I don't know, see if there was anything that you had suggestions on, or?
As far as the wording, we could, but as the legalities, it definitely
Sure.
have to go to Ian.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like a starting place for, if there were other suggestions in this MOU, we have all new staff, all new commissioners, just to refresh that MOU, make sure that we're all comfortable with it now. Is that something you guys are interested in general, or?
Well, I would absolutely say yes, because we found a lot of old contracts that we're dealing with now that weren't.
They
Yes,
should be
they
reviewed
need to be
yearly.
updated.
What I would suggest, Emily, is maybe start by sitting down and seeing if there's anything that you would like to see changed.
Okay.
And then if you want to send it over to Travis and I, we can take a look at your changes and get with these guys and see if there's anything else, and then we can come together and hash it out.
Okay, maybe in May.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, so, Travis, financial policy discussion.
So based on the department head meeting and some of the other comments that was received, I went through this and really redacted a whole bunch of stuff that was either, may have been duplicated, sounds like it was duplicated, ambiguous, and those were highlighted in red. If you look through it, the first few pages are all definitions. There was a couple of spelling errors, but if you come on down, so some of this didn't comply with what finance had originally had come up with, so we took out the 30 days, and it's actually year end. And then based on assessment of the community, well, the next sentence also includes community-based evaluations for finances. A lot of this is, again, mandated by state law. And then we're trying to do multi-year financial forecasts, but currently we do not do multi-year financial forecasts. We do year-to-year financial forecasts through our budget process. So that can always change in the future. Like I said, this is a living document. It can change at any time that the commissioners see fit.
And I think per Commissioner Copenhagen's request, after we had our department head meeting, they had the time to digest it and then give back the input. And I think that's where we're at now with these changes that are made. So this has come back to us now the third time. I think it was a good suggestion to give those department heads so that they all had the opportunity to look at it after we had discussed it.
Yeah.
So now nobody can say that, hey, we've never seen it, we don't even know what it is. And that's all we have to do now. This is the final version.
Yes, this is a financial or final version. For instance, like on this section here,
Yeah.
that's an addition. If it was in blue, it was a quick addition. So when we're looking at our fees and our reimbursement for services, we need to recover the levels that it's costing us so that we're not losing money for services. So that's where that come into play.
And so this right here is a great example of why this policy makes me leery. You guys decide fees. You guys decide what you want to reimburse. You guys get to decide whether you want to make money, lose money, break even on something. And when you put a policy like this in place, you could know for sure that the first time somebody comes in and decides that they don't like what you're recovering, either they think you're recovering not enough, or maybe you guys, for whatever reason, decide, hey, this isn't something that we want to do to break even for whatever reason. All of a sudden, you've got this policy hanging over your head. And so that's, you know what? Like, it's a great, in one way, it's great language. It's a great goal to aspire to. I think that we all understand the importance of having a balanced budget. But as you guys have seen over the past several years, people come in here with all different kinds of situations and all different kinds of asks, and sometimes, sometimes we're going to offer services where we don't recover everything that we put out there. And that's a decision for you guys to make. And you don't need a policy to tell you how to do that.
No.
And you don't want to be
don't.
bound by a policy when you go to make that decision.
And we've been trying to recover our fees to at least be at zero instead of going the opposite direction right now, which is what we've done.
And you
for
can
quite
do,
a few years.
and I guess my point is you can do that without a policy. And there's nothing illegal about this. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just you guys are going to end up, with somebody coming in here and using this policy as a sword. I'm sure. And so it just goes back to that thing that I initially said. There's nothing wrong with this policy. It's a well-written policy. It lays a lot of things out. But man, you better be sure that you want to follow every single word right to a T. Because you know that the first time you deviate from it, here they're going to come.
But in contrast to that, a lot of times when we go for grants or significant monies, they're asking for a financial policy. And then the CFRs.
And I'm not aware of us missing out on any grant yet because of a lack of policy.
Correct, but like Public Health said, they had to develop their own, and DA's office had to develop their own. I mean, it's 50-50 one way or the
It's a
other.
double-edged sword.
But certainly, and I've told department heads this when they've approached me, if there's a grant that you're not able to get because we don't have a policy, come in and talk to me. Tell me what it is exactly that they want. And we haven't had anybody come in since I've been here and say, hey, we're missing out on this money because so-and-so doesn't like our financial policy. I haven't seen that happen yet. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but that hasn't happened. I've heard, I think there's a lot of government entities that have a lot of policy. And I think that grantors and state agencies and people who dole out money are sometimes used to seeing certain types of policies. But again, they haven't withheld money yet, at least not that I've been made aware, based on our financial policy. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just words of caution.
So you're saying don't put the handcuffs on?
I'm saying if you want to put those handcuffs on, you better be sure they're real comfortable handcuffs. You better be sure they fit. You better be sure they fit really, really well. So you don't want a handcuff that's too tight or that you don't like.
So pluses and minuses. So really, what? So.
Well, the plus of any policy is it gives somebody something to look at and say, this is what I'm supposed to do.
So
This is
we're
what I
giving
have
the
to, this is what I
direction
have to do.
Of how, this is how we want to guide it. Here's the direction we want to head, and it's gives them a path forward. Where we don't have that, in my opinion, and this is just an opinion, because what we're trying to clean up right now is because nobody has had a clear path of what they're supposed to be doing, and now it seems like we're doing nothing but cleaning up.
We're doing a lot of cleaning.
We're cleaning, and I don't know, I get it, I get what you're saying, trust me, and I have a little anxiety with it, because I'm like, I don't know, maybe I don't want those on me, but if I do, yeah, maybe I'm gonna make them real loose to where I can get out of it, but we can get out of this.
Well,
Can't
you can get out of it.
That's
You
that
can
question.
get out. I mean, you can change a policy at any time. But when that policy's enacted, you better follow it.
Correct.
I mean,
Well,
it's not as if,
I get
because
that.
if you violate the thing, you can't just say, oh, well, actually, like, we don't want it anymore. I mean, when it's in place, it's in place. And you better follow that thing to a T. I don't know. It's
So. Thoughts, commissioners?
Policy, I'll just add one more thing. Policy's a wonderful thing in that it provides direction, but it limits flexibility. And so, what it comes down to is, good employees with common sense that are going to do the right thing, you don't want to bind them. But then on the flip side, I mean, people have to be able to do their jobs, and they need to. And so, I don't know.
So that's why I took a lot of the shalls out and put shoulds or mays to make it a little bit more open-ended. But again, like Ian says, it's a 50-50.
It just gives the guidance. So the world that I lived in we had SOPs, SOGs all the time, which then related to a policy. Because it said that you will follow these SOPs per whatever you were doing. And it was pretty much lived by on a daily basis, depending on what you were doing. And it gave you a direction of where to head. Now, I don't know if that's, I don't know.
So I know finance has asked for a financial
I
policy.
know that finance would like that.
So maybe we give it a trial period till January and see how it pans out. I don't
So,
know.
Why can't we do that? Why can't we give it a 1-year trial period and say, let's try it, and if it works, great. If it doesn't work,
We'd flush it.
we.
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. I mean, it's the same thing that I just said, though, applies.
understand
mean,
that.
you gotta
So
follow
could
it.
Roll back to
tomorrow
Tom.
just say, we don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have it in place as long as you want. You could enact it tomorrow and keep it in place for 2 weeks and decide, man, this thing is causing all kinds of problems and we want to change our policies can be changed.
Right.
I would just offer this to this commission and to everybody in the county, boy, what it says, you better follow. And department heads better follow it, and employees better follow it, and because if you don't, you're gonna have problems. And you guys better follow it. I mean, so I would just be sure that everything in there, this board wants to follow.
I know it's thin, but if we changed it from financial management policy to financial guidance policies, to give us a little bit of flexibility instead of just,
I think you can do that. If I were gonna, if you just want this to be a guidance document, I would write that right in there. This is a guidance document and none of this policy's binding. But then you kind of come to, well, why even have a policy?
yeah, you water it down.
It's just,
Why-
you could water it down as much as you want, but
why put it
Well,
on
it's like,
paper?
in the fire service, a lot of people had standard operating procedures, and then it went from that to standard operating guidelines.
and again, this is a very flexible process. You guys can tailor it how you want to tailor it.
And it's-
Legally, what you need to know is if you violate it,
Right.
that's going to cause problems. So, what's there is, does this board want to do this? That's what it comes down to.
and read it from the point where see somebody can use it against us.
The first time somebody doesn't follow it,
Yeah.
it's going to be used against us. It will be. I can guarantee it. If somebody's got a bone to pick, that's the first place they're going to go. They're gonna pull policies and they're going to see whether we follow them.
It would also prevent that from ever happening too, that the policy was followed, so somebody was not treated well, I shouldn't say that, but.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of good to be said for policy. I'm not completely bashing policies. I just,
Yeah, I know.
they tie you in a knot.
You're saying stay in the gray. Keep those cuffs loose. That's what he's saying. I don't know, from my standpoint, from what we've been doing with finance, that without clear direction, I think is why we've gotten ourselves all over the board. And nobody really has anything is not delineated to where they really know where they're going. And they're bouncing, they're all over the place. But I also get what Ian is saying too about stay within the white lines.
Yeah. I wanna roll it over a little bit more.
Okay.
And if you have any more suggestions, how I can make it any more gray,
I don't,
let me know.
I don't have any. Commissioner Copenhaver, do you?
You know,
No, not right off. I'm like Ken, let's go through it again and look at it and
What-
see.
one of my concerns is, and nothing against anybody else, but in the time you've been commissioner, how many administrators have been in here? We're on our second,
Well,
third? You came in,
I,
yeah,
1 week apart.
right, so,
Shaq and I were a week
and
apart.
that's,
So two.
I
So
mean, that's about every 2 years, you know?
without guidance of really how we're
Yeah,
directing the
that's one
entire
of the-
county,
That's,
we lose so much, and then department heads without clear guidance are like, well, we can do this because it's been done. I mean, perfect example right here.
yeah, and how many department heads have we shifted?
A lot.
Yeah,
So, again, I'm not,
but that's just,
to me, as I
Yeah.
read through it, for us to follow it, it's pretty straightforward.
yeah.
And it gives clear direction. I mean, I guess I'm not fearful of stepping across the lines at all. I think the lines are pretty wide. It's just a matter of staying between the lines. But everybody should be staying between the lines. And I think that's where we've had problems, is without that
Yeah.
guidance, it's easy to cross the line because you don't know where the line is at. But, I mean, we can put this off for another couple of weeks or whatever you guys feel comfortable with, or not, just take it off.
Oh, leave it there, let me run it through one more time. My eyeballs are dry
What
enough
gives you the
reading it.
most, what is the most out of this policy, other than the definition, what gives you the most cause for concern individually of the policy?
Oh, hell, I don't know. I guess maybe lack of flexibility, but it's sorta in there. I mean, it's there, but,
Let me just suggest, as you guys read through it, if it were me and I was sitting in your chairs as a commissioner reading through it, I would read real closely any language that is gonna direct or guide any decisions that this board makes. So like that example that I just showed. That's, as a commissioner, that's the language I would be paying real close attention to. Are there things in this policy that are gonna dictate how we make budgetary decisions? And if there are, am I comfortable with that? That's the crux of it for this board.
Correct.
right,
And then the second thing you read for is, am I comfortable requiring all my department heads to do these things? But the big thing is, I mean, are there things in here, like we just talked about with that reimbursement of fees? I mean, that's great. That's great language if that's what you want to do. But if you get in a situation where you've got some kind of program that you are willing to expend more money than you take in for whatever reason, that's bad language.
Because you can't do it,
right.
Well,
which.
you
which
can't do it
really-
without the policy coming in
Yeah.
and being waved
Well, In
around.
my opinion, we shouldn't be doing that anyway, because we can't, we're overspending our budget. And overspending our budget, whether we think it's worthy or not, that's not,
The question is though, do you want to be bound by a policy, or do you want to sit up here and make that decision when it comes? I mean, because fiscal responsibility is something that the government should always have in the back of their minds. You always want a balanced budget.
That's our job.
But, exactly. But when you put it in a policy like this, then all of a sudden, you're having to look at everything through this lens. And there may be programs, I mean, listen, there's programs that may make some money for the county, make more than they expend. And there may be programs, for whatever reason, that come time, you don't want to recoup every single cent that you spent on the deal. For whatever reason, maybe it's a program that's very beneficial to the community. And those benefits go beyond just simply dollars and cents. I mean, I'm just trying to throw out different kinds of scenarios that you might be confronted by.
Okay, well, are you comfortable for a week or two, Commissioner?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanna look through it
Yeah.
again.
Two?
2.
Okay.
The one thing I will say about the policy is, I think, as far as policy goes, it's a well-done policy. I mean, it lays down a policy. There's, this is not a bad policy.
Right.
I mean, as far as, there's nothing that you read through, it's like, oh crap, like what it's just, how do you want to govern? How do you want to run the ship? That's what it is.
Okay.
Okay, 2 weeks. So today is the 13th,
Yeah.
so the end of the month.
27th, 28th.
So you want to put it back on a workshop to discuss one more time too, before we make that decision?
You bet.
Yeah.
Just in case. Okay. Got it, Travis? Okay. With that, we've come to the end of our meeting. Thank you all.